Welcome to Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I'm Ryan Dunigan.
And I'm Thomas Jachetta.
Our special guest today.
Thank you.
And today we're going to talk about Sega Genesis, really the system that I grew up playing. I don't know about you guys, but...
Well, you go first, Thomas.
Well, pretty much, the first system I played was NES and Atari. It was like a mix of those two, like equally. And Genesis, I never really had a Super Nintendo. I never owned one. I would just play it at friends' houses. So Genesis was the system that's like second generation system for me that I played a lot more than anything else. So yeah, that was Genesis for me.
If you listen to our Sonic the Hedgehog retrospect, I had a Genesis for a little while, and I said I only had 4 games. I actually had 5 games. Those 5 games were Sonic 1, Sonic Knuckles, Toy Story, Aladdin, and Jurassic Park. I forgot to mention that one. And aside, I don't own very many, but I rented a lot and played a lot at friends' house and all that. So
I remember Toy Story was like hard. That game was hard.
it was.
No, I go
especially the
back-
RC level.
Or
No,
what? It might have been the Super Nintendo one that was hard. I remember there was a Toy Story game that was really hard.
No, that game is actually one of the only games that's identical on both systems, pretty much.
Oh.
And I go back to play that game nowadays, and like, you get like 4 levels into it, and you get no continues, you get 3 lives or whatever it is, and so, I don't know, like they made these games. It's supposed to be a game made for children, but they make it hard enough that like even like an advanced adult can't play it.
I noticed something like, with the exception of Kingdom Hearts, I can't think of a Disney game I really look forward to. But back in the Genesis days, like Disney games were so good.
No, they made a lot of sweet ones. The Mickey Mouse Illusion one.
With Donald,
Yeah, where you play as Donald. It was kind of like magic themed because you got, you had capes and there's magic, and then you also had flying carpets and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't play that one too much. It was mostly Mickey Mania for me.
is that the
And
one where you start off as Steamboat Willie?
You start off with Steamboat Willie and it goes through different cartoons that Mickey was in, and it's like each level is really varied and they're all cool in their own right. And I remember the Super Nintendo version is pretty much identical, but I think there's like they leave parts of levels out. Like the Mad Doctor level, there's there's certain parts they just leave out of the Super Nintendo version that are in the Genesis version, and that's why I like the Genesis version better, I think.
I know there's a level where like a moose is chasing you through the forest or something, right?
No, yeah, it's like, and the thing about that too is on the Genesis version, that part is like smooth. It's like a really smooth gameplay part, and it's cool. It's easy to follow. And on the Super Nintendo version, I remember it being, I don't know if it was laggy or if it was just like didn't look good. I remember like they got lazy or something with the Super Nintendo version. I'm not sure what happened, but the Genesis version of Mickey Mania is probably my favorite Genesis game.
No, I remember I played quite a bit of both of them actually, because I had a friend that had the Sega one, I had a friend that had the Super Nintendo one, so we played both of them quite a bit. But I think the Super Nintendo was actually an entirely different game if I remember correctly. Like it was kind of the same concept, but it sort of like the Aladdin game, but it played different, you know?
Yeah, I remember this like similar levels. I remember it having Steamboat Willie, but maybe I'm just remembering it incorrectly. But I could have sworn they're pretty similar. I'm not sure. Well, we'll have to go back and play it.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that one. It's been a while since I played that one actually.
Yeah, definitely.
But what was like the first games you ever got? I think Ryan explained his, but what was the first ones you ever had?
First Genesis game, because my dad gave me the Genesis. It was his Genesis, and the first game that he showed me was Altered Beast. So that was the first game I ever really played. Like Rise from Your Grave. That was like the game I played the most, and it was like I'd never beat it for like the longest time because you would get to the last boss, which was like the boss in that game at the end of each stage would transform into a different creature, and on the last level he was just a rhino. It was like what? Like he would transform into like a giant like multi-eyed watermelon monster, a guy who threw faces at you.
Yeah, I
Like
remember that one.
a snail dragon and like some sort of like flying alligator thing that shot orbs of energy at you. And then the last boss, you're like, oh my gosh, what's it gonna be? And he's just,
Like,
oh, I'm a rhino. And like
you're expecting like turn to Satan or something.
yeah,
but
because
then-
he's like some
Well, he pretty much is like that.
yeah, he's just like an evil sorcerer, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm just my true ultimate form is a rhino," and he's hard, he's really hard,
No.
but it's like it's just underwhelming.
No, the thing I like about that game is like you start as a guy, you're in pretty good shape. Then you get a power up, then you get buffer,
Yeah.
then you get another power up, then you get extremely buff, and then you get your third power up. And not only like this must happen when you get extremely buff, you just turn to a fucking werewolf
I know.
or a bear or What
It's
else
like
did you turn on to that
yeah,
one?
it's like it's in the first level you turn to a werewolf, second level is a dragon,
Oh yeah,
and
dragon.
then
The
you turn
third to
into
a bear.
a bear, and then the tiger,
Uh-huh.
and then the last level you turn to a gold werewolf.
Yeah.
It almost sounds
yeah.
like it could be like someone's like furry fetish. This game.
Probably it is somewhat somebody somewhere is like, dude, Altered Beast is so good.
That was a game they're supposed. Was that the one they're making a new one for? Now this is probably about like 10 years ago. They're making like a sequel or something like that,
It
and
was-
then that just totally got canned. And
Yeah, I think it was gonna be like
The
Like-
Golden Axe one instead.
oh yeah, they made that Golden Axe one that apparently got really bad reviews.
I think it was like the Altered Beast remake was gonna be like a God of War style game, like it was like a 3D like hack and slash kind of thing. But then I remember my friend John sent me the link to it, and he's like, check this out, and I was like, no way, Altered Beast remake, and then they scrapped it, and it made me sad. 'Cause
It's kind of
Just to clarify, so I don't need my own words. Was Altered Beast actually a Sega first
Yeah.
party, or was that something else?
it's a Sega game.
Okay.
They also there were arcade versions too though, and they like I have on my Xbox I have the arcade version of Altered Beast, and it's way worse. It's like all the sound is completely different. Like when the evil sorcerer comes up, his laugh is different. He sounds like a 12-year-old boy, like hee instead of like an evil laugh.
No, yeah, they changed it. I think on that one, I don't know if can you play 2 players on the Sega one. I know you can play 2 players on the
Yeah,
arcade
you can
one.
you can play 2 players on the Sega one. I remember because you can like the alternate like beast colors were really weird. It was like a green werewolf and a blue bear instead of just like regular.
And
it
did
was
that one
weird.
play simultaneous? Like you play at the screen at
Yeah,
the same
it was-
time?
it was the
Okay,
same- it
I
was,
can't
like,
remember. I know on the
simultaneous.
arcade one you do that, so you really just kind of like the raped crew just going through like the world.
Exactly. When you got it's like once you are both beasts, it's like it's not even a challenge. You're just like spamming a button and moving around because it's just easy.
No, that was a game though. I'd like if you showed that game to somebody who never played it, they'd be like, well, whatever. But growing up, that was a really cool game when I was a kid. I really liked that one a lot. I still
Yeah.
played it this day a couple times. You know?
Yeah. When I show it to people, they're just like they just don't get it, and
Just
it's
blew
like
your
and
mind.
it's completely understandable. I wouldn't get it either, but it was just like one of those first games that we were just like it was just like classic, like like the line "Rise from your grave," like that's stuck in my brain forever.
I
It's up
actually-
there with like do a barrel roll, really.
Pretty much, it's
I
the
actually have a
equivalent of that.
ringtone of that, and then you can like I set it for like my alarm sometimes. so it's just like rise from your grave, and it has like
Well, if the Rhino Wizard told me to do it, I better do it. Shit.
Dude, yeah. Actually, no, it's Zeus who tells you to do
Oh,
that.
it's
'Cause,
Zeus.
like you have
Okay.
to rescue Zeus's daughter.
because it's all like Greek
Oh, it's
mythology.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember in the credits of that game, once you beat the game, it's like the worst credits ever. The music is so lame, and then it's like it shows like they're like cut, and like the guy in the werewolf takes his mask off, and it's like it was people in costumes the whole time. So
That's
it was-
Oh yeah,
It was- yeah.
Oh, I
it
remember
was
that.
like oh,
It
it
was
was
like a movie.
it was
the
a
whole time?
movie. Yeah, it was stupid.
That is like one of the worst endings you could possibly give something.
It is
It's like
like
the
the,
Super Mario Brothers 2 ending, where it's just
It
like
was
it
just
was
a
all a
dream.
dream.
oh yeah, like what a middle finger to the fans.
That
there.
always pissed me off. Well, the first games, like I actually got 4 games in a row because 2 games came off my Genesis, and it was like the sports pack one. So I got like Wimbledon tennis and Greatest Heavyweights. Both those games are actually really cool ones. And then I got Zombies Ate My Neighbors and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the fighting game.
Yeah.
And Zombies Ate My Neighbors is really one of my favorite games of all time. I talked about that a lot on the Super Nintendo podcast, but the Sega Genesis version is the one I grew up on. I still like that one more. I think I don't know. I like the music sort of in that one. It's more digital than like being kind of. Super Nintendo games always had more like they always felt like a smoother kind of orchestra, more experience. Well, then
definitely.
it was totally MIDI keyboard like
Yeah,
to
well,
make the Sega
yeah.
Genesis music.
Yeah, like Final Fantasies and things like that. The music was really, really good on Super Nintendo.
But that game was one of my all-time favorites. I actually just beat it again recently,
That's cool.
and I'm kind of going to beat it on Super Nintendo next. Just
Yeah, Zombies Ate My Neighbors is one of like those super classic games that like everybody played. It's really good.
and then Power Rangers game was really awesome because Power Rangers was like the kids' like dream at the time. So like
there's the-
anything game-wise was awesome, and it was pretty much like a simplified like. I guess you could say Street Fighter kind of version, but it was still like, all the moves were kind of a little bit more complex. They didn't just kind of hand it to you and say that you press this button to do this attack and this button to do that attack. Now you still had to learn them.
The movie was the brawler one, correct?
Yeah, they made a brawler off
yeah.
the movie one for Sega
Yeah.
Genesis.
Yeah, like the with Ivan Ooze and yeah, that was the brawler. And that game's cool too. I really like that game. It's one of my favorite brawler games.
No, that one's a sweet one. I like that one a lot.
Out of miscellaneous games, you guys remember any? This is the age in the '90s where you just make a game literally out of anything. You guys remember they had the Cheetos game for other Sega. I don't remember what it was called. It was
Well,
called
yeah, there was
Chester's
Chester
Advent-
Cheetos, like Adventures, and they made.
Yeah, which you would actually get Cheetos for health, which that seems like that's sending a bad message to kids, really. But
Well, then they
Yeah.
also had the Cool Spot one. You'd get like 7
7
Up for
Up.
health.
It's
Yeah.
good marketing. It's great marketing, and it's a shame they don't do it anymore.
No, because those games. Well, the thing about those games,
were
they made
fun
them really
games.
well.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Cool Spot's one of the coolest
Spot-
ones.
Yeah, the levels in that game, like the backgrounds are really well done, and it was like this game is actually playable. Like the Cheetos game, I think I rented that game and I played the first level and I was like,
I want to see you could drown in puddles in that game.
yeah,
If you got near puddles, you just sink right down like it was like 100 feet deep or something.
Well, in the Cool Spot game, like the music's made by Steven Tyler's cousin or
Oh,
nephew. What's his
yeah.
name?
I don't remember his name, but
But he had his own show with the other guy who was related to George Lucas. They really I thought they just got two
I
guys
know,
who were related.
Judgment, something Judgment. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
Judgment.
They're on
I'll
G4.
say Judgment Day, but no.
They're on G4. Yeah, I know what guys you're talking
Yeah,
about.
well, I really
That
think
just
they're
sounds
they're
kinda-
like, this guy's related to George Lucas, and this guy's related to Steven Tyler.
Give him a show. But that,
They,
it
they,
just
they work in the game industry.
it
Yeah.
just seems kind of funny. He just kind of like,
I think
I'm
it's
Steven
Tommy
Tyler's
Tallarico. That's what his name
Oh
is.
yeah, the guys. Yeah.
I'm Steven Tyler's brother. Yeah, that's great. Just make music for 7 Up. No one really cares.
But they made really cool games like that. I
trying
like
to-
the Cool Spot one a lot. The second one was kind of
Yeah.
dumb though. Real big letdown.
Yeah, I've never played the second one. We need to do that.
It's a top-down view, and it's everything the first one's not. But you still have Cool Spot. But that's kind of how games they did back in the day. I think is they got different
Cool
companies to
Spot
make
was
them.
2D. How they make like a top-down view of like a little.
Well, it's a 2D top-down view,
2D top-down view.
like a Grand Theft Auto slight view.
I wasn't sure if you just saw
Like
like this little
in-
disc. Like that's what I mean.
Like
It's
in Contra 3, like
Yeah.
the second level.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
not but without the coolness of
Exactly.
Well, I'm just
Yeah,
wondering,
yeah.
will the character be hard to see? Because he's just a 2D spot. So do you just see this little line down there dodging things left and right, or do you actually see a little character?
It's kind of like an angle,
Oh,
so
right.
you still it's not just
It's
like,
not
a-
like a
just
line.
a little line.
like arms come out and the
Yeah.
bubbles shoot out.
That sounds like an Atari game.
But well they did like I don't know what it was, but sequels like because they made a sequel to Zombies Ate My Neighbors called Ghoul Patrol, and it's only on the Super Nintendo. It's not on the Sega Genesis, but once again, I think it was just made by Lucas. It wasn't made by Konami and LucasArts.
Weird.
So it's cool, but not nearly as cool. And that's what they kind of happened. There's a lot of games that are just amazing, but the sequels just kind of that's why they're forgotten. I think.
They just try to cash in on it after they make a good game.
And they get like I'm not gonna say LucasArts is half-assed, but like they get kind of just like the half-assed team to make the sequel.
Yeah.
But and then well, we can always just talk about the classic Sonic games. Those always defined the Sega pretty darn well.
That's what got me into Sega, really. We said it all in the Sonic the Hedgehog retrospect. Might as well say it again, just to sum it up. Just that was like probably at the time one of the fastest games ever played.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really find anything to complain about Sonic 1 through. I guess Sonic.
1, 2, 3, and
I guess the only
Knuckles.
complaint about
and Knuckles,
Sonic
yeah.
3 and Knuckles. I guess it's kind of the use your illusions of Sonic games because it came out just like 6 months later. Sonic and Knuckles.
Well, it's
Sonic
really
3.
like it's really just one long game, but they split it up in half so they could just make twice the
I
profit
guess
off
that's
of it.
the only real complaint I could have for that game, really, for the main Sonic games at least.
Yeah, definitely. For me, like the most iconic Sonic was Sonic 2. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's the best.
It's like it's everyone's favorite, and for good reason because it's a good game. And what was it just named Sonic 3D, the one that was 3D? Was that what it was
Sonic
called?
Sonic
3D
3
Blast.
3D Blast. That's right.
That
That's
one
right.
was fun.
Yeah, I really like that game.
Well, as a kid, like before, because I had a Sega Genesis for a long time. Like I carried Sega Genesis through the years when people had N64s and PlayStations. So that was my Mario 64
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the longest time.
It
Like,
wasn't a bad game though.
It was good.
It was a really cool one.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the one for Sega Saturn was more or less the same game, but it was still fun.
Yeah, and like did you guys ever play? It wasn't for Genesis, but it was Sonic CD. Did you ever play Sonic
Yeah.
CD?
Sonic CD.
That is
yeah.
a very
That
good
is a good
game.
In a sense, that's
yeah.
practically a Genesis game because you kind of have to have a Genesis to play a Sega CD. Same
Mhm.
for 32X.
Yeah.
They're kind of just more expansions. But I used to play a lot of Sega CD when I was a kid, and I know a lot of people didn't play as much of that.
Yeah,
but
I
had a
didn't.
friend that had it, so he had about like 15 games, and Sonic CD. I remember first time he hooked it up to like the big like Mitsubishi 36-inch TV. You put on the stereo headphones to play that game. Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom.
Dude, Sonic
That song,
Boom.
yeah.
That song's in Super Smash Brothers Brawl, and it's
It
like
is, yeah.
I was like, no way.
Well, that game right there, I'm not bringing it down because I absolutely love that game. But that game, I don't see why everybody says that is the best in the franchise. It's a really great game. I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
It's just one of those games. It's like Sonic 2, I think, is better, and I think we said this before. Sonic CD, I think what made that so good is because it had like I think orchestral music. A lot of it wasn't just like pixelated sounds, and the backgrounds were a little
They were
well done.
flashy, and the
Yeah,
camera
yeah.
turned, so it had 3D effects in it.
And it had that whole like go in the future, go in the past thing. Which the past everything was awesome. In the future, everything sucked dick.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that now. You're
And
right.
then like just the regular time was just kind of like an in between, or like half and half.
And then when
Yeah.
you saw the anime ending and the anime opening, it just blew your mind when you were a kid. Like, how's that coming out of a video game? You know?
Yeah, I played it for PC, so it was like I had a lot of like really old PC games that I enjoyed. It's probably just a nostalgia thing. I really like Sonic CD.
No, I had that one on PC too. I had that one for a while because I didn't actually own a Sega CD for a while, but I had a friend that has, so that's where we played a lot of it.
Yeah, that's
But I
cool.
used to play a lot of other ones, like the Power Rangers game for Sega CD, which was technically just an episode where you had to press buttons in sequence to make it keep going.
That's like Dragon's Lair for 3DO.
Yeah, it's similar
Yeah.
to that. Like that's what like the Sega CD really ran off a lot of those like video games, and like the time like the idea that like having live action in a video, it made it feel so real.
Yeah, it's weird. And you go back and play those games now, and it's
It's
just
like,
like,
oh.
I don't
Well,
know.
I used to play the Sega or the Jurassic Park for Sega CD, and that game I felt like you were literally in the movie. Like when they say that, that's what it felt like. You go back and play it now, and you're like the graphics they're all like cartoony and stuff. It's not even like live action, but that's how much better it was than like Atari and regular Nintendo and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, definitely.
Actually, going back on Genesis, but back to say Jurassic Park.
Mhm.
That was an awesome game. That was one of the first games we got for the Genesis.
Oh, the first Jurassic Park one.
Where you could play as Grant or the Raptor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now the one that I like the most though is the Rampage edition, the one that came after that.
I never played that
I
one.
didn't play Rampage Edition either.
See that one it was like
Educate us.
Grant goes back to the island.
Grant goes back.
Yeah, he goes back. Like these are these video game stories because he's got to stop Engine from like making any more dinosaurs. And he's gonna do it single-handedly.
They turned Grant into Rambo.
pretty much. That's pretty much what happens because he takes on the army and all the dinosaurs at once.
He actually
Whoa.
killed people as Grant in that.
Uh huh. You
Granbo.
kill people because like in the first Jurassic Park game,
Grambo.
you have Granbo.
They gotta make that. That's actually the next Jurassic Park movie, Grambo.
Well, that'd be cool. Just like Grant. Now he's all old. Now he's like, you gotta go back there and stop him.
Could be like his
I
Unforgiven.
can't let Engine. Yeah. Like he's just there like dusting dinosaur bones off. Be like, Grant, you gotta go back. No.
John Hammond is
I
still
put that
alive.
down a long time ago. I just have these ones and I just take care of this museum now. I don't even dig up dinosaurs anymore.
We find out he had a wife in between Jurassic Park 3 and this. Like, you gotta get over your wife getting eaten by a T-Rex. He's like, it's revenge, you know?
But no, that's what this game is. You go back, and that one just kind of it played a little bit smoother. It had all the kinds of cool weapons in it, and then not only the music's awesome, the gameplay's awesome.
Mhm.
That one you really got to play. That is an amazing game. I used to when I was a kid. I don't know if like that was like the game I held cherished like in my collection. Like when
Was
you're
like a teddy bear.
Yeah, it was like my
slept
teddy
with
bear,
it?
practically. I love that one a lot. It was
Yeah, that
also my
game's-
first mature rated game because it was the MA13
Ooh.
when they finally started giving them like ratings.
Which another one that had MA13 was Maximum Carnage.
Yeah, that was an MA13 one too.
That's like a rare game to find now, like the actual cartridge.
That was a really cool one though because it was like Spider-Man with Venom, and the first one was only single player, but it was a really sweet beat 'em up game, and they even had like Fantastic Four and all kinds of other characters sprawled out through the game.
I remember you'd primarily beat up Beastie Boys.
Yeah,
You looked like the Beastie Boys.
You pretty much just like in all those beat 'em up games, you just beat up a bunch of guys from like the '90s. I don't know what they're doing. They could be going to school for all I know.
Doesn't matter.
Spider-Man's like,
Spider-Man's
listen, my
pissed."
uncle died when I was your age.
Girl,
You
so now
bitches have it too
what are you
easy.
doing out of school? It's noon.
With great power comes great anger of people that got it way too fucking easy. You know?
Now I always thought that like Sega Genesis had like a ton of great beat 'em up and hack and slash games.
It did. I remember that. It wasn't bad for sports games either.
The sports games
yeah.
is I think that's what made Sega actually outbeat Nintendo is the sports games. The
Yeah.
Sega Sports.
hmm
And those ones nobody thinks of that nowadays, but yeah, that was really like the biggest selling point for a lot of people is they bought it for the sports games because
I remember when I was a kid. I'm going off topic for a second, but you would see like you go to buy like shoe shopping. You'd always of course look for where's the Sonic the Hedgehog shoes? Where's the Super Mario Brothers shoes? And while looking for that, they had Sega Sports shoes. They actually had just said Sega Sports, like no real like particular. They're just selling off the logo, really.
That's
trying to
ridiculous.
get kids
Yeah.
into like physical like education.
But still play our games. Still play our games.
Play the games though. Yeah.
Don't be too physical.
But back to the beat 'em ups and stuff. There's two series I loved like so much was Streets of Rage and Golden Axe.
Golden Axe, yeah, I agree with Golden Axe. Streets of Rage is cool too, but like the thing about Golden Axe was like, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, but like what was the last boss? His name was like Death Adder. Was that his name? The first Golden Axe?
Yeah, I don't remember what his name was. I just remember like really what that game was is that somebody wanted to make a Conan game, but they didn't have the rights, so they just made Golden Axe because that's really what it is. Like you look at the main character, it looks kind of like Conan. Then the girl looks kind of like the girl in it, and then
Sonya, yeah.
even though they kind of have like the dwarf guy, but he's supposed to be the I guess he's supposed to be kind of like the Asian guy and the Mongolian guy.
Yeah.
Like that game was fun. Me and my buddy Nate played it not too long ago, and they talked about Death Adder, and Nate kept pronouncing it as Darth Ader, and he thought he was just like they're just ripping off Darth Vader, and I'm like, no, that's not how it's pronounced. And he's like, yeah, it is. It's Darth Ader, and I'm like, no, dude, it's Death Adder. And we got to him, and we beat him. We were like, oh, we beat Death Adder, and then the game keeps going. Like there's more.
Yeah, that's what I remember about
more
that.
game.
You're like, what the fuck? I'm out. It continues. I only got 2 lives left.
The main character, say he's supposed to be like Conan. What was his name? Was it like Bonan or something, or what?
I don't remember.
See, that was the times like you had to have the manual and look it up. That was the only way you're gonna ever figure out the character's name. Sometimes.
That was cool when games used to have like hints in the manual and like you had to they had like story.
Well, that's
and
where
maps.
you found the story. It was like presented in like 3 paragraphs, and then sometimes they had little summaries of the characters and like who they were.
Now you open up a manual. It's like, what are you doing reading this? If you're playing the game.
You open it up and it's just like
We'll explain it to you along the
one
way.
piece of paper. It's like
Yeah.
No, manuals have really gone downhill. When I was a kid, when I bought a game, like on the way back home, I would sit there and be reading that manual because I was so excited to like.
Like you'd be looking
yeah.
at like the pictures of the characters, the graphics they'd use and all that.
Yeah, because you get all the cool drawings.
Yeah, you'd actually like read the controls and be like, okay, I understand this game. But nowadays it's just
Little diagram of Mario pulling out a radish or something. Oh, that's so cool.
Sometimes you go back to play some of these old games, and if you don't have the manual for it and stuff, sometimes it's like it takes forever to figure out what the controls are. Sometimes and then you die about 6 or 7 times. You go, oh, well, I didn't know I could fucking do that.
Yeah, some games even like it's hard to find a direction without the manual. You might need to read the manual to just know where to go.
Like I was playing Donkey Kong Country 3 the other day, and like that one, that was the one because I didn't get that one until way later on, and I didn't realize on like the 3rd boss or whatever as the elephant, if I hit like L and R, I can suck water in. Those ones like, oh, well, see, that's where that manual would have come in handy.
That's funny. Back to beat 'em ups. Batman Returns. Did you guys ever play that one?
Mm-hmm.
I played a little bit.
It was like it wasn't so much a beat 'em up as other games because that just like I remember it being straight 2D. It wasn't like dimensional, like front and back. It was just 2D.
No, it was that. Now there's multiple versions of that one. You had the Sega Genesis one, which was just a straight 2D one. If you got it for Sega CD though, they added in like sort of semi 3D kind of F-Zero style racing levels.
Mm-hmm.
Where you drive the Batmobile, which is really cool. Now when I get older and I play those, I'm like, those levels are fucking frustrating. I just want to play the 2D one.
Yeah, the 2D one's still frustrating. I remember that game being frustrating.
No, that game
too.
was really hard.
Yeah.
I remember Batman Revenge of the Joker, which I'm assuming that was made by a Japanese game that saw a picture of Batman and Joker and just solely went off that. Because Batman walks around with this like gauntlet on his hand and he shoots like he shoots like little like laser stars at people.
Well, that one was kind of like Mega Man almost.
Yeah, when he dies, he explodes like he's Mega Man.
Wow.
No, they made a lot of those kind of like. There's also another one. They made one for like the Tim Burton one, just like the first Batman for Sega, and that one kind of sucked too. The one that I really liked for Sega Genesis, at least though, was the Adventures of Batman and Robin. Even though it's really hard.
That one was really fun.
Where it's like it's a 2-player one, and then like it's just kind of like an extreme beat 'em up and like run through.
And I want to you like had generally 4 stages, not 4 stages, but 4 parts, and within those 4 parts, you had like several different stages, like 3 stages each or something like that.
Yeah, they did something like that.
Because you went off against, I think, wasn't like Freeze the last boss, or was Joker the last boss?
I think Joker was the last one. I know like the first one I think was like Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn was the first boss that you fought on the level, but
or yeah, maybe that's what
I think the big ones. I think the big characters.
Maybe you fought Joker right in the very beginning. Then I can't remember. It's been a while since that one.
Maybe he came back or something. I know the big ones you would fight was Two-Face, Freeze, Joker, and then was Penguin in there? Was it Penguin or? I'm assuming it was a big one.
I remember that game being. It was also really hard though too. That's kind of what the Sega Genesis was. Even though some of these games are really fun, some of them like I've been trying to go back nowadays and beating all those games like I couldn't beat when I was younger and stuff. And even still, it's just like some of those games.
How did I do this?
So frustrating.
Yeah, some of them are hard. Like You ever played the Ren and Stimpy game?
I remember
long
playing
time
it.
ago.
That's been a long time.
That game, it's really hectic. There's like tons of stuff going on the screen. It's almost like it reminds me of Toy Story because there's tons of stuff going on in that game as well. And it's just stuff being thrown at you. You have to jump over crap, and it's just a constant barrage of shit. So it's like it's hard. It's hard.
Like the show.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, no, that's all like have you ever played the Last Action Hero game? Well, I must
No,
play one on
no.
Super Nintendo, but like the thing is, I think it's kind of the same thing on Sega Genesis if I remember correctly. But that game was just like it's just their games like you feel like it shouldn't be this frustrating. I don't know why it's so hard.
Last Action, that's the movie with Arnold, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
one
yeah.
where like
I
the
c-
kid goes to the movie.
Yeah. I could imagine lots of games based on movies seem to be difficult. But they're mostly just bad.
Some of them are kind of cool though, because well, I just want to mention just in the Last Action Hero because I had the VHS copy of Last Action Hero, and on that one, like the previews at the beginning, it had the commercial for like the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo game, and it had like the most ultimate '90s guy. He had this big hair, and he's like playing the video game like in like the pitch black room, like with like just like blue lighting. And he's like moving around, holding the controller. It's like, get the action adventure video game, Last Action Hero. It's so cool, it'll blow your mind.
I remember this is loosely related to Sega. I remember when they came out with the Sonic the Hedgehog SpaghettiOs.
Oh
They
man,
had
I
the
used to get those all the
commercial.
time actually.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was younger, I'm like, oh, SpaghettiOs, you're okay. Throw Sonic on the box. Oh my God, I gotta get it now. You
Why
know,
don't
the way
we
your
s-
mind worked. But the commercial was just this like totally '90s kid. I want to say his hair was gelled up. He had a headband and he had sunglasses, just sitting there playing Sonic the Hedgehog. And then like his mom's all like, Johnny says playing games. Says dinner. Food, and like she just throws a can at him. He just like drink. He just like I want to
Chugs it.
chugs the can. So he's like, whoa! And he like goes into the game just running fast with Sonic or something.
Oh my god.
And then it's like Sonic the Hedgehog SpaghettiOs. Get them. They're healthy.
Get them. Make your mom get them for you.
It's the '90s.
Chug them and trip out. Go inside the game. Pretty much.
Still food.
Which I did it for that very reason. It didn't work. But
I used to do those all the
Sure.
time, and then like you kind of realize that like macaroni and cheese and like SpaghettiOs, if they're not the character ones, they don't taste nearly as good. There's something about the texture of them.
No,
Yeah.
they don't. If you get
They-
like the shaped ones, it just
more texture, and they collect the sauce. Which
Yeah.
it-
now it's becoming the culinary episode. But
it's bad.
Do they even just sell like Chef Boyardee or anything like that anymore?
they still do.
They do?
My nephews eat that shit.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it for so long. I didn't know if it was like just like got lost in the '90s.
It's still
Sega
around.
Genesis.
It's just Spain.
Chef Boyardee.
It's just SpongeBob now and whatever. But no.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
but back speaking of very '90s stuff, you guys remember the video game Comix Zone?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was a
Comix Zone.
really cool game.
It was so hard, but it was so awesome too. It was really fluid too. Like, it was cool because, I mean, now this would be kind of a hard thing to pitch, a hard thing to sell. But it was like you're playing the comic, and when you came to a panel, you had the option to go up or down or left or right. So it would be almost kind of like
Well, the cool thing is it looked like a comic. Like everything was like designed like a comic, and you went from panel to panel, and it was like action oriented.
they had like word bubbles as you'd be fighting the bad guy.
Yeah, so it'd be like whenever like dialogue was presented, it was talked out like a comic.
It was
And the whole point of the game is like the bad guy was actually like the illustrator of the comic, and you're
Yeah.
going through it.
well, you were the illustrator, and like one of your creations came to life, and then like put him in the comic book or something like that. I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, that's how it went actually. Yeah.
And
And,
that-
then he started drawing shit because you were in the comic now.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, the character in that, whose name was Sketch, wasn't it?
Yeah. Something like
He
that.
had
like,
a pet rat that'd always be on his shoulder, or whatever.
and he had like that kind of like the mullet kind of.
It was in a
with
Yeah, yeah.
with a
ponytail.
ponytail, and some like really thin sunglasses.
He had like I think like cut off jean, like a jean jacket with like a sweater underneath
With, like
it.
some
Yeah.
fingerless gloves and whatnot, and shorts. I don't know what it is, but shorts and like high tops is very '90s feeling.
Yeah,
It is.
it actually played like a partial fighting game too. When you actually go against the bad, because every panel there'd be a certain challenge, and then you choose to go like down or left or something.
Yeah, and like you'd have moves actually, kind of like you're playing Street Fighter, which
Yeah.
is really cool.
It was a really good game.
But speaking of fighting games, you know what was a good one was Street Fighter.
Oh, how can you forget Street Fighter?
I mean, I played a lot on Super Nintendo, but I owned it on Sega Genesis. I had the Championship Fighting Edition, the one where they had all the boss characters.
Yeah, that one was like it was better. It was better to have that game on Sega Genesis back in the day.
Because if you had the six, it's something about like the shoulder buttons just don't work nearly as well. It's mainly the left shoulder button, nothing about the right one. But
yeah.
when you're trying to like roll and then have to hit that at the same time, it just kind of like doesn't work with the wrist too well. But the Sega Genesis worked out perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Not now, but back when you're maybe the same thing now, but back when you were a kid, what was the character you'd always play as?
When I was a kid, the character I always played was Chun-Li, because that was one of the first games I played in the arcade, and that's mainly I think because her moves were simpler, like when you were a kid
Mhm.
before you could start learning everything.
Yeah, definitely. I used to when I played it on Genesis and Super Nintendo, and I saw it in the arcade, I was just drawn to Blanca. I always played Blanca. Like I play a lot of Street Fighter nowadays, and I don't even touch Blanca. But for some reason, when I was a kid, I was just Blanca. He was like the weird character.
Yeah.
He was like a some kind of monster or something I didn't know. And so
But
I
when
was
you're
like,
a kid, you
that
kind of
was-
like monster characters.
That was the
Yeah.
character I'd always play as when I was a kid, Blanca. I play him once in a while now. Now I'm more like Akuma and Sakura. But yeah, Blanca, though, was my favorite character when I was a kid.
And
Yeah.
then they made the Street Fighter, like, I think on the Genesis called Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is the one that had, like, the 4 more, like, new
Mhm,
fighters.
Yeah.
But I never thought that one, like, I always thought the graphics looked better in the Championship Edition. Like, it was like to put those characters in, the extra 4 levels kind of, like, brought it down a bit. I mean, it still plays
Yeah.
the same, but
Yeah.
There's so many versions of Street Fighter 2, and Street Fighter in general.
I don't know. I actually just realized there's one made for Dreamcast, like a remake of Street Fighter 2, which is probably like that one they made for Xbox and PS3.
Yeah, there's tons of there's like 3D Street Fighters too that are like
Those
like-
are really forgotten games. Those, like,
They are.
Street
the
Fighter
ones,
EX for PlayStation.
the ones that came out
Yeah.
on PlayStation.
Yeah,
Like, you never hear anybody talk
yeah,
about
you
those.
play those games. Like we got a PlayStation emulator, and my friend Alex was like, "What are these games?" I'm like, "Oh, those are the 3D Street Fighters," and he's like, "What?" He didn't even heard of them before. They're just really weird, obscure games.
Well, they're not really even. They don't even like play 3D. They still play 2D. It's just
yeah,
3D
they
graphics.
play 2D. It's like, but it's just like Tekken graphics.
And it was just. And I remember I had Street Fighter EX3 for the PS2, and I remember not liking it very much at all.
yeah, it doesn't really fit that universe.
I remember it was kind of like slower, if I remember correctly.
It did
Yeah.
behave slower because of I think 3D just does that.
But it's like one of those. I have not played that one since like 1998.
One of it's another really good fighting game
For Genesis.
for Genesis. It's a little bit more obscure.
Oh.
Justice League Task Force.
Yeah, that game was actually a really one of those fighting games that was actually made really well too. Like everybody has their own moves and it plays like Street Fighter. It's got 6 buttons.
And it has kind of a cast of characters. I mean, all right, it has the big 3: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. Then it has Flash, Aquaman. Aquaman has the Aqua mullet. It is awesome.
Well, Superman also has the mullet too, and it's
Yeah.
very like
But just seeing a mullet on Aquaman is just so much.
I don't know. It actually makes him really badass when he's
Yeah.
got a mullet.
And then they had Green Arrow, and then Cheetah, Darkseid, and I think Despero's his name, the big
Yeah.
pink guy with the fin on his head, whatever. Yeah.
But that was a cool one. It played really smooth. And it almost kind of well, I guess that this is that name. I'm thinking of the Marvel one for Super Nintendo. It was like the War of the Gems. That it's like almost like the one that kind of like preluded like all the Marvel vs. Capcom games. But
Yeah. There was another fighting game. I cannot remember the name of it. It's driving me crazy. We just played it the other day. It's a fighting game where it's like in space and there's like 6, 7, or 8 characters, and you can select like 3 different pieces of armor for each character. Does that ring a bell at all? It's like you could have like a helmet piece of armor, a chest piece, and like a leg piece of armor, and depending on what kind of armor set you pick, you'd have different moves. And there was a character named Naruto, and he was like a samurai, and then there was like a praying mantis character and a big
that
like
sounds kind.
and there was like a Gorgon character like Medusa.
Was that for 32X?
I don't think so. It was just a
Okay.
Genesis game.
Huh. I have to
I
look that
don't-
one up. I don't think I've ever.
I don't know.
I don't remember. Well, I'll have to look it up and remember the name. 'Cause
Hopefully, someone will leave it down in the comment section.
hopefully, because it's the praying mantis is like, it's pretty iconic for that game, and I can't remember the name.
Well, there were some other sweet fighting games for the Sega Genesis too. What was one of those ones I was playing? There was Samurai Showdown came out for it.
That was really good.
Which that actually was a pretty smooth translation for it too. I
Yeah,
thought-
Samurai Showdown is not a bad game at all.
and that was a good one for that. I'm drawing a blank on something. Oh, there was these ones. Actually, did these only come out for Super Nintendo? Sometimes I get confused at this point in the day. But the Clay Fighter games, I think it might have been
I
only Super Nintendo.
I
Actually.
don't think they came out for Genesis.
No, I think
I'm
that was
not
just
sure.
Super Nintendo. Those games
Yeah,
are kinda-
Super Nintendo, and then when 63 1/3 came out for 64,
Yeah.
that game is great. That game is really fun.
But strange enough, well, yeah, actually, you know what were the really good ones too? Were Mortal Kombat, at least for the time.
Oh yeah, well definitely. Like you go back and you play Mortal Kombat like 1 and 2 now, you're like, ugh. Well, you can't even do anything except uppercut and sweep. It's like Mortal Kombat 3 was like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 was the first one where you could do like actual like big combos, like really big combos. And the first 2, they were great. I remember like at the old movie theater, they had Mortal Kombat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I would go there and play it, and it was great.
No, but when I was a kid though, I played so much Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3. Especially 3 though. That was when I played the
Yeah,
most.
3 was definitely.
And I like number 2 a lot too. One thing about number 2, the thing is like you had to get the Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 though, or else you didn't get Scorpion, and you didn't get There's a couple other characters you didn't have in that one because those things 3 had all kind of like the newer characters, which actually I kind of appreciate lots of those ones like over time more. Like
Yeah, like Cyrax is like one of my favorite Mortal Kombat characters.
Cyrax is really cool. I like Smoke a lot.
And Smoke is like he's a robot in that game too, right?
Mhm.
Mortal Kombat 3, he's one of the robots.
They make them all robots, which is it's like in the regular story they all those guys. If you look in the once again, if you have to look in the books, it tells you all the stories on these things. And
Yeah.
None of those guys start out like that, which
Yeah,
I thought that was like the coolest thing about the new Mortal Kombat game was like that story mode, just like it was amazing. And it's like one of those ones like if you actually read all the books, it's like it's like it came to life. They finally put it all together so you can actually see it.
Yeah, that new Mortal Kombat's a great game and the storyline's cool, except for Raiden is just stupid. Raiden is an idiot in that game.
Yeah, like we'll
Give us
figure
an
it out.
example. Give me an example how he's a dumbass. I've only seen like parts when Spencer played.
He just pretty much at the beginning of the game he sends a message to himself, his past self. And his past self just doesn't interpret anything correctly. He just basically he basically repeats history.
He keeps making the
It's
same
like-
fucking mistakes.
He makes the same mistakes over and over, and he's just oblivious and dumb. It's
I
Well,
remember.
Kung Lao died, but be glad it wasn't any of you guys.
pretty much.
Well, I remember that like I was never really a diehard Mortal Kombat fan. Not that I ever disliked it. I just never really got into it. But I remember playing one of the ones for like PlayStation 2 for the first time. One of the stupidest things I've ever seen. They killed off the main character in the opening cutscene. Liu Kang.
That was in
That was one of the ones for PlayStation 2.
It was the second one for PlayStation 2, which I'm totally drawing a blank on it.
Nah,
Probably
dude.
wasn't important.
Starts with like a D or something.
Deception. What was it,
Deception. I think-
Deception.
Yeah, it was Deception.
Just seemed like one of the dumbest things you could possibly do. Let's kill off the main character, not in the long run of the game, but in the opening cutscene.
Well, it's kind of like when you play a fighting game. It's like I don't know, you can't really kill a fighter like main. That's the only thing about fighting games. You really have to have like all the characters. I know he kind of came back as a zombie.
I don't want to see like
but-
Ryu's like neck get snapped at the beginning of Street Fighter.
Yeah, there's characters that aren't canon, like Evil Ryu. He's not really canon, but he's in Street Fighter 4, and he's a cool character.
Oh yeah, well the Evil Ryu, he's also in Street Fighter Alpha 3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And like
Street
Shin,
Fighter, yeah.
like Shin Akuma, like
Mhm.
those are cool.
Isn't there like Shin Sakura at some point? Like in maybe one of the Marvel vs. Capcom ones. They have like Shin Sakura or Evil Sakura or something like that.
Oh yeah, there is a. I know it's on Marvel's Capcom.
There's
You-
Shadow Chun-Li, I think, in Marvel vs. Capcom at some point.
Yeah, there's that too. Here's a game. This is a game I played a lot. I don't know if anybody else plays much, but it's called Kid Chameleon, and it was a Sega first-party game once again. But it was pretty much like, in a sense, it was the Mario Brothers game you got for Sega Genesis. But you were a kid and you went into a video arcade and you got sucked into the game. But then it was cool because like in each level you get these power ups. So one you'd be like a samurai, one you get like a tank, one you were like an axe murderer, kind of like Jason.
Well, I remember the kid, but without the power ups, he was like a kid with like spiked up hair and sunglasses and like be like, "Whoa, I'm in the game, bro."
You know, he kind of had
so
like more of a
90s.
jock look almost than like just like the total wool because he had like a white like shirt on, sunglasses, his hair was short, like almost like an '80s character.
Wasn't his hair spiked? I thought it was spiked.
No, it was just like the '80s kind of like.
He
where
did
it's
look kind of like a
light
douche.
up.
I remember the kid looked like a douche.
But that game was just such a cool game because you just got all these power ups and then there's tons of different levels. There's a bunch of secrets in the game and really, as I said, it felt the closest to like a Mario game, even though I know it doesn't sound like as
It's
much.
kind of
but-
like, sorry, we know you want a Mario, but you got a Genesis. Here's this. So it's kind
Yeah,
of like,
it's Kid Chameleon, and it's also like a lot of people say that Sonic is like the equivalent of
Well,
Mario,
yeah,
but they're
Sonic's-
very different. They're
Yeah.
like Sonic's a much different game than Mario.
Kid Chameleon to Mario. It's kind of like, well, we couldn't get you Red Hot Chili Peppers, so here's Faith No More. You know?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is. Like,
Faith No More's decent.
well, when I was a kid, it's like I didn't own Indiana Jones, so I had to watch Romancing the Stone. That was my Indiana Jones. So whenever I'd like, Mom, I want to watch Indiana Jones, it'd be like, oh, here you go.
Basically the same thing.
But you know, we get Michael Douglas instead.
Yeah,
Michael Douglas still good.
Yeah,
the
got
the
Doug.
music in games it reminds me of Primal Rage. You like remember
Oh,
Primal
yeah,
Rage?
Primal
Yeah.
Rage was such a cool. That's another good fighting game.
Yeah, like it was my favorite character in that game had to be Vertigo. He had like so many moves. He had a projectile like poison spit, and he could teleport. And like yeah, he's pretty cool. And Chaos, that monkey Chaos with like
Well, that was
the fart moves.
yeah. The cool thing about it
Wait,
is
what
like,
game is this?
Primal Rage.
Primal Rage. It had like
Oh, this is the one where you're fighting as dinosaurs.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah,
like
dinosaurs
Alright,
and monkeys.
there's like
and
little like villagers and like worshippers running around on the ground. And you could pick them up and like eat them.
you, like step on them and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just trying to like really piss off. What was the politician that was trying to outlaw like trying to make games mature?
Oh, his last name starts with an L. Joe
Joe
Lieberman.
Lieberman, yeah.
Yeah.
Just trying to piss him off.
I really, let's just piss him off. That's probably what a lot of game companies did, especially American ones, you know.
Yeah, and that in Primal Rage that had like one of the levels, the background music was "Smoke on the Water," but done like through a MIDI synth. It was
Well,
just
they'd be like, they would just add like the riff in there, and then it'd go back to another song, then it'd come back in again. Then
yeah, it's like a mix of songs, and it's like
it was like an Aussie song in there too. I think.
yeah,
There was actually, I remember like, because sometimes it was funny when they would bring like mainstream songs into a pixelated game. I didn't play very much, but I briefly played Crue Pinball, which was Motley Crue Pinball.
No, yeah.
And the opening to the game is just one of those random things. You just see like this, van with a flame paint job down it, pull up in front of this house. It's nighttime.
It's in Suburbia.
Then you see like lights go on in the top room. Then you hear just like a pixelated version. I think like Dr. Feelgood, and then like you see all the lights in the neighborhood go off. You hear someone say like a pixel voice, "Turn that down," and the game starts.
Well, yeah, it was just pretty much like Motley Crue, and it was like it played kind of like Sonic Spinball, sort of without like a character being in there. It was just a pinball game, but it had like 5 Motley Crue songs, and it was funny how you could like market things like that.
yeah. Sonic Spinball was cool too.
That
really
was
liked
a sweet one for it.
Yeah, the whole feel and like ambience of that game was really cool.
Had the whole like kind of like post-apocalyptic thing going in that.
Yeah, and like the first level had the sewer creature that would like come up like.
And if you stayed there too long, it would come up and you had the thing at the jump. You'd be like prying against his jaws, trying to get out.
Yeah.
But speaking of like musician games, you know what was like the coolest musician game? That was the Michael Jackson game.
Oh, Moonwalker.
That game, and it plays really cool too. It's like one.
It is. It's like well polished game, and it's like, I like the how the levels work in that game. How it's like you're 3 levels of a single world, and then you keep going.
Well, it's almost they're each kind of based off like a music video, sort of. Even though
and they have the song. You're like yeah.
And yeah, they have the music. There's like about 6 or 7 Michael Jackson songs in it.
It's like, go ahead.
Okay. I like when you do the combo and everybody in the room just starts dancing. When you're done dancing, they all just fall down dead.
Yeah, because you just like hold the spin thing.
Yeah, you have to spend like all your health to get down to like red,
Uh-huh.
and then everybody dances and they die. And it's like you do it on a boss, they'll like fall down, but they still have more health, so they
You get like I remember on the 2nd level, I think it was, you get the dogs to dance.
yeah, like
That's awesome.
and one of the bosses was like a silver dog,
Mhm.
and then there was the zombie level, and then there was the level where like you were in a cave with like spiders.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, that's what I was thought too. That level, like when you get to the end of the game, it starts to be like, what the fuck is this? Like,
I know. I think
this-
Billie Jean plays in that level.
Yeah, you get like the weirdest song, and yeah, you're like spiders and stuff, and then you eventually turn to like the car and.
Yeah, it's cool. And like the zombie level, when if you have to notice it, like you have pretty much know where it's gonna come from beforehand. But like the shooting star that comes down, and like you absorb it, and you become like a flying robot for
Mhm.
part of the zombie level, and you can like just destroy everything.
You also get that in like the 2nd to last level where you're like in the space base.
Oh yeah.
And then like the very end level where you're flying as a car is like the hardest level ever because the gameplay completely changes.
Yeah.
You would kick like stardust on people if I remember correctly, right? This one I played only
Yeah.
just a little bit.
You could like. Woo! And like
Yeah.
kick and be like, and like whenever you would beat a level,
Yeah,
it would
but-
show Michael Jackson's face, and you'd be like, woo! Like a 8-bit like Michael Jackson face. Woo!
And then like the farther you got, the longer it went on.
Yeah, you'd be like the 3rd level. It's like, woo!
So you got rewarded for it.
Yeah, pretty much.
See how long Michael can go now.
That was an
Woo!
awesome game. And really
Yeah.
at the time, that was like, because I came in like, it was one of the first Sega Genesis games released too. Like the only other thing you really had to get at that time was like Alex the Kid, which is just like such a strange game.
Where cars attack you and shit.
Where your cars attack you, and then you have to go bet your life in a Rochambeau game.
That just seems funny. Like, oh, what do I get if I win? Oh, you get some money. What if I lose? I take your fucking life.
You want to
I'm
win?
just 8 years old. That car outside tried to kill me. What are you doing?
And there's planes that look happy, but they're full of death and evil. What were some of the other games that you remember playing at all?
I don't know. I have a story about Mickey Mania though.
Please tell.
My parents were having, it was like a Halloween party or a Christmas party, some holiday party, and a bunch of people were over. And I was just upstairs playing Mickey Mania, and I hadn't beaten the game yet. And I've been playing that game for a while now, and I'm at the last world. I'm like, okay, and I get to Pete and like the last boss, and I'm like, okay, I can do it this time. And I'm fighting Pete, and I'm doing pretty well. And this little girl comes up the stairs, and she's like, blah, like she's like fucking like two.
She's a little girl. Like,
She's
just doorway and running down.
She was just like slobber all over her face. She was like a toddler, and she just walks into the room like blah, and steps on my fucking Sega, and the game freezes. And like,
Oh!
yeah, and like I was so upset. I was like, I almost threw that baby down the stairs. But
You know, just, blood!
I don't know what happened.
Then the dog, the one time like the PlayStation was actually left open, and the dog came and peed inside of it.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
my
dude, I totally forgot about that. Oh my god.
Well, that's whenever I think of PlayStation, that story always comes. I think whenever I open up the PlayStation, I always think of that story. So now it's always like, close that PlayStation quickly. The dog might come in and get it.
Like your dog just breaks in, like jumps through the window,
Just like lifts its leg. No.
I'm pretty sure it still worked too.
Well, did it?
Yeah, even though it got
I
peed
just always
on.
thought that was such a
I
funny
got
story.
peed in, like it
Yeah.
was like open in the disc tray was where it was peed on.
Well,
just knock your meowth down.
well,
Don't
most
worry
of those
about
things,
now.
strange enough,
That's
is like
right.
with all video games, like if they get wet, all you have to do is, or like any electronic control, if you just let it dry out for like 3 days, it mostly always will. It's only
Yeah.
when you turn it back on when it's wet. That's the only time problems start to happen.
Yeah, video games, like video game accessories are like really durable, especially like Nintendo handhelds.
Well,
I can't remember how many times I've dropped my Game Boy and it's completely fine.
Well, I remember I had a Sega Vision magazines from like 1994 and stuff, and those like the Sega, like I think that was its main magazine. It was all
Yeah.
about Sega, and they used to talk about all this like because that was back in the day when like they talked shit on like Nintendo throughout the entire. Like you just read a magazine where like half of it was talking shit on Nintendo. Like they really wanted to convince kids back then not to get the other system, and they had this things like, what you can do with a Game Boy because you got a Game Gear because you were a man and you told your parents like, no, give me an extra $100. I need that and give me like 100 batteries because I'm gonna be going through this shit.
I didn't say it in that tone, but I did have a Game Gear. Yeah.
No, Game Gear. Well, really, a Game Boy actually was kind of better than a Game Boy because I mean it was backlit, the graphics were better, it was
Definitely,
color.
Yeah,
It took 6
was-
batteries and lasted for only 6 hours.
I had a bunch of games that were awesome for it. I had Sonic Chaos. I had Sonic Triple Trouble. Once again, 90s is when Disney games were really good. I had The Lion King.
Oh,
that
the
was
Lion King.
For Sega Genesis. That was a
It
really
was
cool.
generally the same thing, but it was a really awesome game.
Yeah.
You know,
and-
one of the many Disney games was fucking hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Disney made you fucking work for it. And they had, I'm trying to remember the other ones. They had like some miscellaneous like game. You're on a motorcycle, you punch people as you go.
Wait, was it
by.
Road
Road
Rash?
Rash?
Maybe Road Rash.
Because
Yeah.
Road Rash, that's
Road
one
Rash
of those
is
games, one of the
great.
coolest ones. That was like a Sega exclusive game from EA because it didn't come out for Super Nintendo.
Yeah, Road Rash is really
And
great.
all 3 of them, it was like the coolest thing ever. It was like it was a racing game, but now you could punch people as they came by,
Yeah.
steal weapons, so you get chains and clubs, and you could beat up police officers.
It's kind of like Akira.
It was literally the first game that you could literally beat a police officer like off his bike. When I was a kid, I used to like instead of like win the race, I would just slow down just so I could beat the shit out of the cop and like knock him off. And you just felt so proud. And like, oh, cool thing you do in that game too is because there'd be like oncoming cars.
Doing this way,
Is
looking
you
at NWA.
You would kick. Well, you would kick like the other guy's motorcycle into the oncoming car. I love those games so much.
That's funny.
And then there was what was another one? I'm drawing a blank on some of them. I know there's a lot of I had a whole bunch of them.
Well, you know, wasn't really. These were really cool games to me when I was a kid. Was the Shinobi games.
Yeah, Shinobi's
And you had,
cool.
I think there was 4 of them because the original one came out for Sega Master in the arcade, but then you had Return of Shinobi, which was the second one. Then there was Shinobi, the one where you had the dog. Can't remember what that was called. And then there was
I can't
Shinobi
remember.
3. It was kind of confusing how they did it. There was technically Shinobi 3, Shinobi 4, but
in one of
it was like the Shadow Warrior, I think was what that third one was called.
in one of the Shinobi games, didn't they have like a lawsuit over it? Like you fought Batman in a level.
No, and if you get the original copy of Shinobi, Revenge of Shinobi, it's like really hard to find because I've picked up a couple of them and they weren't that one. But there's a level where you fight, I think you fight Batman and then he turns into Spider-Man, or it's vice versa. Or you
Oh,
fight Spider-Man
wow.
and then he turns into Batman. And they have the rights to, I think, Spider-Man, but they didn't have the rights to Batman.
I'm surprised Marvel said, "Yeah, we'll let this ninja like attack one of our greatest heroes
Yes,
ever."
this Japanese guy comes over to America just so he can start hooking up with other superheroes. But so then you get the other one, then the bat thing is like it's like a bat monster, and then it turns into Spider-Man. I think that's how it goes. It turns into Spider-Man.
That's pretty insane.
But yeah, you have to have the original copy for that though.
Another one of my favorite games for Genesis that had a Super Nintendo counterpart that, in my opinion, wasn't as good as Beavis and Butthead.
Oh, the Beavis and Butthead one was so
I
much.
never played that one.
Well, the coolest thing about on the Super Nintendo one, it was just kind of like a platform scrolling game, so you just kind of went through. But on the Sega Genesis one, it was like you were in Beavis and Butthead's like world, and you went to different places. Like
It was
like an interactive adventure. Almost,
yeah, it was
like
it
RPG
was like
sorta, kind of.
it was like for that generation like an open world kind of game. It's like you
Really?
would sit on the couch and change the channel, and each channel was like a different level, and you can go to any level at any time. And it's basically just throughout the game you're trying to get pieces
Of a ticket.
of a ticket to a Guar concert, and it's cool because it's co-op too. You can have someone play as Beavis, and you can play as Butthead, and Butthead had like a fart attack, and then
Beavis
Beavis
burped.
yeah, and you could get like some of the weapons were like spit wads out of a straw, and then you get like a dart gun.
Does Guar actually make an appearance at the end of the
Yeah.
game?
Yeah, they
the
do.
last
You-
level's
you
a Guar concert.
Yeah, you can like, if I remember correctly, there's two
They're
different
not
endings.
shooting. They're not like jerking off blood in the crowd, are they?
I don't think no. It's just like it's
Kyle
just,
went to one. He said like you actually.
Yeah,
gotta go
I
up-
was with Kyle when we
Same
went to that
one.
car, and it was really intense. They had like a giant George Bush that walked out, and they cut off his penis, and he would like squirt like stuff all over the car, and cut off his head. It was cool, but like that game, one of the endings you could like go to the Guar concert, and then if you got like everything, you could be like on stage with Guar.
Oh, that's cool. I don't think I ever
yeah.
got the on stage one.
That's pretty sweet.
I might that might be just completely incorrect, but I think you could. I'm pretty sure you could. And all the worlds were cool, like like a sewer level, and then
You went to the school, and
Went
then
to
you
the
went to like
school.
the shopping mall.
the mall, and then the hospital, and then
Mhm.
the burger place.
And the kind of cool thing too is like on each level there's like little mini games too in them.
Uh-huh.
And I remember like that whole game took a lot of like thinking for a Beavis
It
and Butthead
did,
game.
dude.
Because
It
like
did.
I would play that game forever, and you'd be like, where the fuck do I go next? Because you
Yeah,
had to
'cause
solve puzzles, and
you
you had
had-
to get different.
You had to have
pieces.
certain items, like you had to sell like the radio to the guy to get the cash for like the item from the toy store, like the dart gun, and then yeah, that game was
It
pretty
was
tough.
pretty darn complicated game. It was a sweet. I think it was made by Virgin at
Yeah,
that time.
and,
Virgin
like,
made games.
I think the hardest part of that game is the hospital when like you have to run away from like that fat guy. You remember
Oh,
that?
yeah.
That fat guy's chasing you, and
Of
he's
course, it's a fat guy.
yeah, the fat guy in his underwear, and he's like chasing you
Yeah,
down the
really
hospital
creepy looking,
hallways.
too.
Yeah, and it was hard, dude. I
Did he rape you if he caught you? Like, what was he chasing
just-
you for?
I don't know. He was just fucking
You
crazy.
didn't need an explanation back in the 90s.
Some
Chased
meth.
by a methed out fat guy in a hospital. It's cool. Beavis
No,
and
but
Butthead.
that one was really cool. And the Super Nintendo one's kind of cool, but like nowhere near as cool.
Yeah, it's just they're two totally different games.
You know, was another where the speed of game was on both of them, but I still like the Sega one was more. And you were playing this earlier. Was the Aladdin game?
The
Yeah.
Aladdin game was awesome.
Aladdin's cool, especially, well, at least not when Jafar disappears on you in the last boss fight.
Like
Like,
that
that
happens.
happens.
Glitch,
It's just
yeah.
like you beat him in his first form. It's like, oh, here's the snake. Oh wait, there's nothing. He's just gone. So I'll kill myself. But that game is really cool.
Well, I like the Sega Genesis one because, like, on that one, every single level is like completely different from each one. While the Super
Mhm.
Nintendo one kind of repeats a lot of levels, and then also in the Sega one, you get a sword.
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff,
like
and the Super Nintendo one, you have to jump on them. I mean, that was made by Capcom.
The Genesis
Yeah.
one, the graphics are just so smooth in that one. The gameplay's so fluid. It's just not just
it is
good
a
for its time. It's a good game all around.
yeah, it is a very quick, fast-paced game. The only thing that it's like sometimes if you go too fast, the camera doesn't catch up with Aladdin, so
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't see what's ahead of you. You're just like on the edge of the screen. If you just but if you know it's coming, I gotta just spam the sword and just run through every freaking level.
And yeah, the Super Nintendo one was cool too. And I like that one a lot. That one's really smooth and plays well. I think they even
Mhm.
made it for the Game Boy Advance. That's how good of a game that was.
Oh yeah, I think they did. That's cool.
But I like this.
Yeah.
The Sega Genesis one was the one I liked.
Just
the
as
most.
cool, and there was lots of like Disney hints. Like you could see like Mickey ears everywhere. Like in the desert level, it's hanging on clothes and like a clothesline, and then in
I
the
forgot about that. But now you
and
mention
in
it.
the dungeon level, there's like skeletons with Mickey ears and stuff, and like one of the like secret areas in the desert level, there's like goofy head hieroglyphics on a pillar, and if you jump behind that pillar, you get to a secret. It's cool. There's lots of like hidden Disney references.
Now here's a hidden treasure game that most people never played, but I think it's a really sweet game. It's called Bonanza Brothers, and
Sounds familiar.
I've heard of
it's a
it.
game where like you play as like a short fat guy and a tall guy, and you go and you're just robbing people's houses and you're
I
robbing
remember
banks.
this, Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool because like it actually has like even like pre-Metal Gear elements where you have to like hide.
Wait,
against,
what's
like,
it
the
called?
wall.
Bonanza Brothers. I remember
Dude,
this now you
I
mention
have
it,
played
yeah.
that game. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
and you
played that game.
rob houses and stuff, and like
That
yeah,
game's
you got to
cool.
get to treasure in the level, and it's co-op too, which is badass. Each
Yeah.
person has their own screen, so you like one person can do one section of the house, and the other person can do other ones. You got security guards and dogs and traps. But I thought that was one of the coolest made games ever, and they actually made a remake on that. For PS2, they came up with this one. It had like 10 Sega Genesis games, and they remade them like kind of in high-res graphics and everything. And that was one of them they did. They did that one. Then they did a sweet Golden Axe one, and then there was like an Outrun. I don't remember the other ones. Strange enough, there's no Sonic ones on there. I don't think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But
Sonic doesn't need to be remade.
Speaking
of- yeah.
Sonic's so awesome as is.
Speaking of like short fat guy and skinny guy, Toe Jam and Earl.
Oh, I forgot about Toe Jam and Earl.
those are really cool. And that was another one of those games too, where like the first and second one weren't really the same style of game. They're both kind of different, but both cool.
Yeah,
The first
yeah.
one was like a top-down view, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
Angle?
that's how it started out.
I can't remember.
I know the second one it was like it was side scrolling.
I remember when
Yeah,
I told my mom
yeah.
like one of the games I wanted for my birthday. Like, what game do you want? Like, Toe Jam and Earl. She's like, I'm not getting you a game called Toe Jam and Earl.
Well, but they made all
Like,
those,
why not? When you're a kid, you just don't piece it
well,
together.
they made all those really weird games too, because like that's kind of like Earthworm Jim's, like very fucking weird.
Yeah, but it's
And-
good. Both those games are good.
But
Earthworm Jim's good, but like I think one of the reasons that one's kind of forgotten is a lot of kids didn't really get it. It was supposed to be like Buck Rogers. I don't think a lot of kids got that whole reference of it.
Well, because I remember when I was a kid, actually, I knew a lot of older, like mostly like uncle-like people that would like, dude, check out this game, Earthworm Jim. Because when I was a kid too, like I remember I had a lot of uncles that would play like video games. Strangely.
Yeah, my uncle did too. I inherited like a bunch of like I didn't inherit. He let me borrow like a bunch of PS1 games. Like that's when I played like the first Resident Evil. Like not even it wasn't the director's cut. He had like the original
The
Resident
original,
Evil.
like the big box.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of my uncles are like, throw a fucking football.
Well, even the uncles I had that were like that, they still had video games too. It's like, so like I always knew one uncle, he'd always give me a sweet like Sega Genesis game or something for like my birthday.
That's cool. Vector Man's also a really cool game.
I forgot
dude.
about Vector
Ooh,
Man.
that
yeah,
is a good
That
one.
was hard though.
And
That
I remember
game was
back in the
hard.
day, they had it like when if you bought the game when it came out, it said if you could beat this game, you get like $20,000.
What?
No, yeah, that was
Really?
that was advertised as the game. It was like they were like, it's that fucking hard, which almost kind of make it like you think about that nowadays. Like, why the fuck would I want that game if you're gonna make it that hard to beat?
Nah, yeah, dude. A lot of like games like Demon Souls and Dark Souls nowadays, people are like everyone's like that game's just recognized for being hard. But if you go back and play a game like Vector Man, it's
I still
that
wonder
game.
if
That game is hard.
I tried to beat that game multiple times and I just never was able to.
I-
Never
Which
was able
game?
to. Vector Man.
Vector Man, yeah, yeah.
I never beat it. I don't
And
know.
the second one too. I tried the second one. Like maybe the second one will be easier, but
I'm sure someone out there has beat it, but
somebody got that. Who got that $20,000? I
That's
want
what
to
I
wonder
wanna
if like
know.
somebody just like today, like won it. Like they call Sega. I want that $20,000. Like, listen, we're Sega. It's not the '90s anymore. We're fucking broke.
We don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
Here, I'll send you a $2 check, and here's Vector Man 2.
Hey, what if there was
Vector Man
Shenmue
reminded me of
3?
another game when I was just thinking about that. Gosh, I'm forgetting what that was. I don't know. I felt like I was getting led into something when I heard about Vector Man.
I'm not sure.
And-
Battletoads.
Battletoads, because yeah, that was actually exactly what I was thinking.
I was just thinking green. So
Because
Yeah.
when you think of like really
Yeah.
hard games,
You think
Battletoads
about,
is
yeah,
fucking
definitely
good.
think about
I had to like I beat that game. It's easier if you beat that game by yourself, because the problem about that game is if your friend dies, you both have to restart the level, even if you had like 3 lives left,
Yeah,
and that's fucking ridiculous.
it is. Battletoads is very.
And that was the remake of the regular Nintendo one on the Sega Genesis one.
Uh-huh.
They
That's
also
cool.
made all the other ones like Battletoads and Double Dragon. But actually, these are the two. Here's 2 of my all-time favorite games that I'm surprised it took me this long to think of it. But is Castlevania Bloodlines for Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
That's like that's my favorite Castlevania. That's a side-scrolling one, like
Mhm.
like that's non-RPG kind of traditional style one.
Mhm.
And then Contra Hardcore. That's also like my other
I
favorite.
never played Contra Hardcore.
That one was cool because like you chose between 4 characters and they each kind of had like sort of different weapons. Like when you pick stuff up, it wasn't always the same.
Yeah,
And then you could go with multiple paths in that game too.
that's cool.
And it was really a cool one. Me and John Bumgarner used to play that one a lot.
That's cool. Another really a game I really enjoyed that wasn't necessarily I didn't find it hard was Echo the Dolphin.
Oh, that was
I
a really
remember
cool
that
game
one,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like hard or anything. It was just the whole like ambience of that game.
It was
and
almost
just
kind of a
the
depressing
music.
game.
Kinda.
You're
It
trying
was
to save all your friends, right?
Who
That's
got
what it
sucked
was?
away in like a whirlwind.
yeah something like a whirlpool or like yeah. It was just cool.
Just the music and it was
It's
kind of
kinda
like
artsier for the
downer.
It was just
time,
it
I
was
remember.
more of just an experience rather than a game. It was
Yeah,
just-
that was just
yeah.
like it was just like the exploring, the experience. I remember that one also
Yeah.
being kind of slightly difficult too. Maybe it was the second one.
I don't think I ever beat it. So
No, well, at least I just don't remember beating it. I just remember having
Yeah.
a good time in it.
Yeah.
And they had the second one too, which I played a little bit of that one too. It was kind of the same, but
They had one for Dreamcast also.
they also had one for Dreamcast. I've never got to play that one to this day.
I
and I've
played
always
the demo. I remember the demo being fun.
it got great reviews and always looked cool, but I never played that one. But that was a pretty good one. Well, we're kind of getting up to about the hour mark, so I guess it's time to wrap it on up.
Cool.
So, well, you probably always talk about more about Genesis, and at some point I really want to do a Dreamcast one,
That'd be
Dreamcast
fun,
would be
yeah.
really fun. dude.
Dreamcast was really my like.
We'll have to bring you on that one, Thomas.
First,
I could think of tons of games right now about Dreamcast that would be cool to talk about.
So still, I think I even mentioned that earlier on another one, but yeah, the Dreamcast one I really want to do next for anything Sega wise.
That'd be cool.
But yeah, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes,
I'm Ryan Dunigan.
And I'm Tomas Jachetta.
our special guest, and we will see you later.
Thanks for listening.
Bye bye.